Tapestry with Miriam on Fusein, Who Am I? People ask me, why Fusein, Who Am I? Let's think of tapestry as threads of fabric that are weaved together to make something really beautiful. In our society today, identity is a big part of our lives. It can hinder progress or build us in our communities. And Tapestry with Miriam is going to try and navigate some of those issues that we face in our communities. In my studio today, I have special guests. I have Miss Odette Thompson.
Yes.
She's an activist in the community. She's also a financial broker and also a pastor. And we are so glad and blessed today that you're here. Thank you so much for being here and blessing our show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And I have Mr. Nikoni here, who's the founder and director of Now Valley Foundation. And he's going to talk about that foundation later on in our show today. And welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me here.
Yeah, thank you so much. So today we begin with an elephant in the room, a big elephant in the room and a big elephant in the world, COVID-19. How has COVID affected you guys? And how has, the community been coping in this pandemic? I'll start with you, Mr. Nikoni.
Yes, it's a good topic to begin the conversation, I believe. We are living in a very difficult time in our journey as a people. Mm-hmm. And we are quite used to struggle as a people, especially within the diaspora community.
Yeah.
And so COVID is just another level of our human spirit, a challenge to rise up above the dividends of slavery and everything else. So the community is actually beginning to pull together to find ways and means that will allow us to survive even better. And that is, aspect of it is what we call the Africa Diaspora Food Initiative. And this is also part of how we mobilize the professional, the nurses, the social workers, the psychiatrists, and put them together to provide the services that will be needed at this difficult time in our journey.
Well said, well said. And Odette, how should the Black community prepare for future pandemics like this one?
Okay, so when we talk about being prepared for the unforeseen event, we're talking about planning for the future. And so with our community and what we're talking about today, I find that many in our community, we don't plan. And so this should be a wake-up call for us in how we plan in terms of investing, plan in terms of how we put aside for a rainy day. And this is indeed a rainy day. And because of that, we want to make sure that there are strategies in place, strategies in place so that when this happens again, God forbid, we are prepared.
So in other words, what you're talking about here is money management.
Yes.
Okay, so how should, as a woman, of course, domestically you have to be equipped as a woman, and also economically, certain things that you have, if you have a husband or something like that in the family, a household to prepare. So from a young person to an older person, how can they, maybe just 3 steps that they can use to make sure they have good money management in the family?
Well, this is something that's not taught.
Yeah.
And I find that this is the downfall that we have because it's not taught to the next generation. And so we are unprepared in even how we put together budgeting.
Yes.
And so where I come in as a financial broker, what I'll do is to say to an individual or a family, you know what, let's have a budget in place and have that budget work in a way where you can see what's coming in, what's coming out, and you teach your children to save, you teach your children to plan, you teach your children to put aside. Because if we continue on the road where we're just spending, then we will have nothing left in the basket. And so to a female, they say that the hand that rocks the cradle is the one that rules the world.
Yeah.
And so because we are in charge, we need to know how to better equip our families for the future. So for me to say to an individual what to do, you know what? Plan and plan and plan.
Very well said, very well said. And Mr. Nikoni, I just want to ask you a cultural question. In this, pandemics happen from different places. And of course, the world has different pandemics that have happened. And we've got some pandemics that have happened maybe in Africa and they're not even in North America and stuff. But how does culture influence the choices we make to deal with pandemics?
Basically, as a historian, I tend to look at everything through a historical lens.
Yeah.
And so for us to prepare for future pandemics, we need to look at the history of pandemics and the role that communities play in making sure that we sustain our communities. And example is a lady called, I believe, Mary Sickle from Caribbean, from Jamaica specifically, who during the Second World War used home remedies to help military people. In fact, she's been recognized in Britain 2 weeks ago about the role she played in home remedies, whether it's ginger, whether it is garlic, that kind of stuff. So we have a history of how the communities come together.
Yes.
Specifically in the United States, the black community knew that there was racism in the health system. So they mobilized nurses, women, doctors, psychiatrists, all those professionals and formed groups within the community itself. So I want to say to the black communities that let us not rely on the government services alone.
Yes.
But we must also have a contingent plan in place as to how we are going to help our community. You mentioned the word culture. Culture plays a significant role.
Yeah.
Because we are an extended family system. For us, our survival depends upon our collectivity, how we connect to each other, spiritually, emotionally, and otherwise. So those are the kind of tools we have at our disposal. But we don't have bunkers to go in and hide.
Yes.
Our only way to sustain our community is connecting to each other, being there for each other in the spirit of Ubuntu. And I also heard you mention Tapestry, which is the right word to use for this program.
Yeah.
I brought this piece of Kente.
Oh, that's very nice, very nice.
That analogy that Kente explains the complexity of the African culture and the African people, how we are inextricably woven together as a single tapestry.
Yes.
And therefore, if you pull one of these threads, you are pulling the collective whole. So I am who I am because of who you are.
Because of who I am. Oh, wow, Sage. That's why I like you to come to this show. Like, you're so wise, Mr. Nikoni, and I love the fact that you brought your Kente here with the tapestry, and I just want you to be the promoter of this show, I guess. So that's really good. That's really good. So thank you so much, and those of you who are staying with us, again, please stay tuned. We'll be right back. Remember, your thread, your tapestry. Thank you so much for our guests that are here, and those of you who are just tuned in. This is Tapestry with Miriam on Fusein, Who Am I? Again, thank you for our viewers to have tuned in here. I would like to ask Miss Odette, because you're just a trailblazer. You do a lot of stuff. You are a community activist. You are a financial broker. You are a mother and a pastor. Like I said before, to those who have just tuned in, they have to hear about you as well as an entrepreneur. My question to you is, what is your why?
Ooh, that's a question I ask myself from time to time. Why?
Yes.
But my why is my legacy. I believe in purpose, and I believe that we need to make a mark or leave a mark when we exit this world. So because of that, I want to make sure that when I leave this world, that I leave it a better place. I leave it changed. There's a mark that I made specifically because of my interactions with individuals and my input in their lives.
Thank you so much. So who inspires you most? If you can tell our viewers, who inspires you most?
I have many persons that inspire me.
Okay.
Mr. Nikoni for one.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just love how he is. In terms of how active he is in the community, in
Yes.
how he gets everyone just together, and he's like that glue, that keeps the whole tapestry together, So, but in terms of my inspiration, I have 2 daughters, and I believe that young girls, young ladies, they need to have something to look up to, someone to look up to. And I try my very best to make sure that they don't look outside of our home, but they can look at me. Mark you, sometimes they think that it's too high to aim, but I try my very best to make sure that what I'm doing, it is done in such a way that they can see that I'm inspired to do what I do because I want them to be better. I want to make sure that they are better when they're done looking at what they see.
That's very good because it brings about, I think maybe you've already answered that question as well. How can a woman or women reach the same level of tenacity that you have attained so far? Like, how can they do? Because now I love the fact that you talked about your children, and that's my inspiration as well. Sometimes, we have daughters, and we want them to see us in that leadership role.
Yes.
And also see the world at some of that glance, because you have to make sure they are strong. Yes. There are a lot of things that happen, especially for women, abuses and whatnot, and everything we have to meet in the world. So we want to prepare our children in that.
Right.
So I think that how can a woman reach the same level of tenacity that you have?
It takes hard work, really hard work, and it takes consistency. First and foremost, you must have a goal. If you have a goal, you have a plan,
Yeah.
you do it day by day, hour by hour, and you have a stick-to-itive attitude that no matter what comes your way, you are not going to give up. And you have to be your biggest cheerleader. Sometimes you're looking for someone outside to boost you,
Yeah.
but you have to have that inner voice,
Yeah.
that even when everything else around you is saying no, and everything else around you is crumbling down, and that dream that you have,
Yeah.
it's not coming to fruition, you have to have that tenacity in you,
Yeah.
that you're gonna get up tomorrow morning and you're gonna start again, and you're gonna be your biggest cheerleader. And you know what? Where women are concerned, one of the biggest issues that I have is that we are not cheering each other on.
No.
We tend to tear each other down.
Yeah.
And so that is something also that I strive to instill in my girls and even their friends that come around, that we need to uplift other females. When we see them doing something good, we should be their biggest cheerleaders. The jealousy, it doesn't work, right? And so because of that, we need to that will help to uplift, because just to hear another woman say, "You're doing great," it is such a big motivation that it will get you to go further.
And I think it's you bring up a very good point, and a lot of things that we are going to talk about in this tapestry with Miriam is some of those issues of identity, some of those issues of who am I to this person. And I think sometimes we want just another woman to validate us, and when they are not, it's not even about the men to validate us, it's another woman to validate who I am. And
That's right.
if they recognize that, so we have to talk about some of the misconceptions that we do have in different places or different aspects of our lives. And thank you so much for that. That was really a very good highlight for our viewers as well.
Yes.
Mr. Nikoni, I want to ask you as an elder, and you've done a lot of community work, and I think you have Now Valley Foundation as a founder yourself, and also a director of the same place, and I believe you also have a library there, and as a custodian of African history, right? We have this wave that is around, the end SARS. the Black Lives Matter and Black excellence, what else, everything else, what has happened, especially in the recent months that we've been experiencing these things. What comes into your mind when you see those things?
That seems to be a loaded question, but let me touch on something she said, and I always tell her that I found a good bargain, meeting her.
Yeah.
Because she comes to this environment wearing several hats.
Yes.
Whether it is a pastoral experience, economic experience,
Yes.
Motherhood, activism, all those things are qualities. But I want to dwell on something that we are lacking, and that is economics. Because quite often within our community, we look at economics as just as science, but economics is social science. And our ancestors created a concept of economics. And in West Africa, we call it susu. If you're from the Caribbean, you know the role susu have played before the banking system came up.
Yes.
How we put money together, and otherwise, in 10 years' time, each one of us will own a house. That spirit of togetherness is the same basis that the banking system was established. So I think that I want her to take a particular role in actually educating us on the issue of economics.
Okay.
And so that we can embrace it and we can leave some fortune for the next generation. Back to your question about the role history
Yes.
plays. I make a reference to, I believe, Marcus Garvey from the Caribbean.
Okay.
He said that people without their history is like a tree without roots. But as a black people, we are deeply rooted. In fact, we are more rooted than any other race in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, we cannot walk around as if we just show up yesterday. We've been here minimum 500,000 years. And so that when we begin to go back, in Ghana we call it Sankofa, we're looking back in order to go forward. And I have an analogy that I have used for young people, which is history is like a rear view mirror on your car. Now you want to move forward, so you got a windscreen. But the small mirror on the side is the one that is going to tell you that you're moving forward safely. So that if you don't use that mirror, guess what?
That's right. Yes.
18-wheeler behind you is going to run over you in dead. So that's the importance of history. So everything we do, we must be able to look back in order to go forward in the spirit of Sankofa.
Wow. That is just amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. And I think what you talked about, the economics and all that, I think we are here, and to our viewers, Tapestry with Miriam is going to navigate a lot of things, like I said, a lot of identity issues that we have, because some of this stuff are coming from where we don't know where we're coming from.
That's right.
Or we might not even know where we're going if we
Yes.
don't know where we're coming from. So that's very important for us to really learn and have elderly people who can actually impart that wisdom to us. It's very important, and I think on this show we're going to have a lot of lessons, a lot of topics, subjects that we're going to talk about in terms of who we are as Black people and even everyone else around there. The other thing I wanted to find out from you, Mr. Nikoni, is you have a library at the Now Valley Foundation Center. That library you have is very important because it's really a lot of African history.
Right.
So how do you explain the importance of that library to a young person who's just growing up here in Africa, like maybe African diaspora youth? How do you explain that?
A library in the African history is a meeting place where minds come together to exchange knowledge. And in our history, we have built the greatest library ever known to humankind. We built the history of the Library of Alexandria in Egypt. That was the first library that consisted the history of the entire human race. Then we went on to build the Library of Timbuktu in Mali. Then we went on to build one in Spain, the Library of Sankore. So we come from a background of library creators. Now, for some reason, we have taken our eyes off the ball. Today, the average family will not visit a library, not even in a year, to pick up a book and read, or just go and sit down there and read storybooks with their children. So for me, the African Diaspora History Library is a platform where we will come to share our stories. And how does stories impact us? Because we have been identified as a people with a single story. in the story of Achimamanda Ngozi of Nigeria, brilliant writer and public speaker.
Yes,
He said,
yes.
the danger of a single story. So you tell the story from a negative perspective that will come from a third world, a dark continent, where people who have no belief system. And then you got a single story. But when you dig further to realize that we have established civilization beyond the 100,000 mark. Do you understand? So when you begin to inspire the youth, say, listen, your grandfather was the people who established the concept of a library. And so you're not just here as a follower, you are a leader. We are innovators. We are not just followers.
And just to cut you short, I think that that's very, very important for us to understand that when you have an example in front of you, if my grandfather once went to the moon, I want to go there.
I want to be an astronaut.
So that's very important that we have to impart into our society today to our youth, because they have to know that, you know, we don't have the dumbest brains or whatever they've called us. We have the brightest ones. We've been to the moon. We've done this. Writing started with us. You know, mathematics started with us. So all those things that we need. So sorry, I cut you short. You can just go ahead.
Yeah. So you know, if somebody is telling you as a young black kid that you cannot do this, you cannot do this, borrow the phrase and say, yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
So those who are doubting that we couldn't do certain things, you say we can play hockey, we play hockey like never before. You say we can play tennis, we play like never before. You say we can play football, you say we can go to the moon. Those who are doubting, we are here as a living testimony of yes, we can.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We are coming to the end of our session here today, but I just want to ask my special guest here your thoughts on what is happening around the world, you know, in terms of how do we make sure that our youth follow through with, even if they are protesting, like, you know, how we're protesting around the world for Black Lives Matter, for everything, you know, human rights. How do we teach them to make sure that they learn how, you know, how to follow through legally and make sure that, you know, they fight a good way? So how do you, because I think you would probably say something like that.
I want the young people to fight, really, because when I came here 15 years ago, I came in March. In July of that year, I was at the American Embassy in Toronto, beating drums and supporting apartheid in South Africa. And I was just a student, but I didn't care a boot if they were to send me home. And so the young people must say that you need to make sacrifices. Let me tell you something. Heroes are born out of heroes are born from the ashes of tragedy.
Yes.
And that's how heroes are born. And if you are a Christian or a believer, God doesn't use the people who have not been tested. So you have to be tested, and we are being tested as a people. And we must rise up and say, never again. So for me, my advice to them is, don't sit down and look at the old people. They have already squandered much of the resources that we have. You must stand now and hold them accountable of your future.
Yes.
That's my advice.
Yes, very important. Any final thoughts?
Yes, I have to piggyback on what Mr. Coney just said in terms of God doesn't use who he hasn't proven. And so with our young generation that's here now, it's the time for them to fight. It's a time for them to fight like never before, because guess what? The world that we live, it's going to belong to them, and they have to fight for what they're going to be living in. The situations, the circumstances that they want for their children, they have to know, put their foot down and fight. No matter what, fight.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. This was very wonderful, and I'm sure we will be meeting again very soon on this show. And I think that with economics, with the library, which we here on the show, we are encouraging readers and authors. We also have a book corner that is going to be airing here very soon to encourage people to read, and that's very important even to our viewers. I just want to thank you guys for tuning in today. I want to thank you, my guests, for coming as well. Thank you so much. And also I want to thank Univision Production Inc. Univision Awesome team, very good. Thank you so much for making sure this everything was done properly and all that. Please follow them on social media. Also follow us on social media, www.fuseinumi.com. Remember, your thread, your tapestry.